Mine's just receiving. Mine's just receiving. It's not broadcasting. Mine's playing it by yours.
So I should sit on the left side or right side?
Right over here.
Right over here?
Where were you? Make it a lot easier. Yeah.
you're signing, but I don't have. You have to sign in. I think. You'll know right away whether it's doable or not.
Here's the problem. Is there's people that are or some people that make the directly on the so
How do you know?
you can't have two cameras. You can't create a new live stream. This one's already
No,
going.
I don't want
This one's already going.
Umbrella. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask everyone in line to please pass through as quickly as possible so we can start on time? Ladies and gentlemen, would you please pass through the line so that everybody can try to get through? Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you if you're going to come back tonight for Shiva, that you pay your condolences to the family tonight rather than wait in line, because we do want to start the service on time, and that's about 10 minutes from now. So again, if you're in line, and you're planning on coming to the Shiva tonight, would you consider paying your respects to the family tonight?
We're starting in a couple minutes, and so if you're welcome, of course, to accept condolences to see the family at the Shiva, we represent the Shiva. But at this point, we'll have to cut off the line and ask people to instruct people to go to find seats. We are starting in 2 minutes.
would like to start the service on time, could I ask everyone, the remaining people, just pass through real quickly? While the family is receiving the last people, I do want to announce again that tonight you'll be able to pay your condolences to the family here at the synagogue. Please, everybody, if you have a cell phone, put it to silent mode.
Do you remember Rabbi?
Oh, so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time since Corey and I go to Barnes.
We were there for his wedding, by the way.
Everybody that's here at the service and everybody who's watching online, which the last I looked, there's over 80 devices online. Thank you all on behalf of the family for coming. I don't think any of us ever thought this day would really come. So Rabbi Weissberg and my father Seymour were extremely close. My dad passed away earlier this year, the day after we had Rabbi Brief's funeral here. And I just know that he'd want me to say how much of an inspiration he was, really, to everybody. Rabbi Weissberg was in the U.S. Navy, and we're going to begin the service with honors from the U.S. Navy. So at this time, if everybody would please rise. If you're a veteran, you can salute. If you're not a veteran, if you can put your hand over your heart while taps are being played.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having us here today. It is a great honor to be here. We invite you now to place one hand over your heart during military honors. Additionally, if you have served, we invite you to join us in the rendering of a final salute during the sounding of taps. Bugleman, sound taps.
Sound taps, aye.
Thank you. You may be seated. him on behalf of the President of the United States, a grateful nation, and a very proud Navy. Please accept this flag as a recognition of his faithful and honorable service.
Jewish tradition, in our Bible and our sacred literature, when something sad would happen, something calamitous, something shocking, our forebears, particularly our biblical forebears, would rend their garments, in a sense exposing the heart, exposing the wounded, fragile, vulnerable heart. That's the act of kriya, of tearing. Halachic mourners do so. And so I ask Amira, Ariel, and Alona to rise. I'll come down and we'll do the blessing. The blessing for Korea acknowledges God as the Dayan Ha'emet, the judge of truth. אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך לצד רשעים, ודרך חטאים לא עמד, ומושב לצים לא ישב. כי בתורת אדוני חפצו, ובתורתו יהיה יומם ולילה. The first psalm. Happy is the one who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God, the Torah, is that person's delight, and they study that Torah all the time, day and night. Such a person is like a tree planted by streams of water. It yields its fruit in season, its foliage never fades, its fruit flourishes. Truer words about an individual never spoken than these words that refer now to Rabbi Victor Weissberg. One who did not follow wicked counsel, but just counsel. One who truly followed the teaching of God, who studied Torah and imbibed and absorbed Torah, truly day and night. One who was planted firmly, like it says, a tree planted by streams of water, planted firmly in beliefs and within a community, and in confidence and strength. And one whose foliage never fades. His teaching, his Torah, always produced. The fruits of learning always flourished. And we have been the beneficiaries. L'kol zman ve'il l'kol chefetz tachat hashamayim. For everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather them together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time for silence, and a time to speak. So we have lost and we have torn in the act of Kriya, and we will speak now words in memory, tribute of, and celebration of the life of Rabbi Weissberg. So we speak. It is my honor to call forward first Rabbi and Tamar Weissberg's son, Ariel Weissberg, and Amira and Alona, their daughters.
You have my family to thank that this is 5 minutes short. Honor your father and mother, so that your days shall be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. This is the 5th commandment. It is only one of 2 commandments of the Decalogue that require action. Actual, definitive acts to achieve compliance. This is a commandment about family and requires children to affirmatively love and honor their parents, to maintain the holy concept of family through generations. Victor Weissberg embodied the spirit of this commandment in every aspect of his life. He was not only a devoted son to his parents, but also a father figure, mentor, and guide to countless individuals in our community. Likewise, my sisters and I embraced our dynamic family by loving and honoring our parents, and by following their leadership and valuable lessons they imparted, both when we were young and as adults, about community, Judaism, Yiddishkeit, and the importance of Israel. Family was a central theme in the life of Victor Weissberg. First as a young man, then through the continuum of his storied life as a teacher, rabbi, father, leader, and friend. My father's story begins in 1927, when he was born to Jewish immigrants in Detroit. Almost immediately, to be closer to the Friedman side of the family, the Weissbergs moved to East Cleveland, the predominantly Jewish neighborhood, to a 2-story apartment building. There, Grandpa Isidore, Grandma Ruth, and Victor lived together with Bubby Masha Friedman and Zadie Friedman until my father went to the Navy in 1945. Not surprisingly, the Weissberg household was a female-dominated environment, with Grandma Ruth running the show. She would work full-time as a bookkeeper. Bubby Masha supported 3 Friedman households, including my father's, with proceeds from her very active and lucrative bootlegging. She sold bathtub slivovitz from a baby carriage. While the Weissberg family struggled financially, like most Americans during the Depression, the Weissbergs, and specifically my father, did not struggle spiritually. Grandpa Isidore taught my father a love of reading, the importance of obtaining an education, the importance of making and maintaining strong friendships, and that a good reputation outweighed all riches. Some of my father's best sayings came from Grandpa Isidore, like, "A gentleman is the master of the unspoken word." See, my father always had shine shoes because Grandpa Izzy told him the first thing someone looks at are your shoes. Zadie Friedman was a pious man who spent most of his time in shul, praying and studying. My father spent his time before school and after school with Zadie Friedman for 18 years. During those formative years, Zadie Friedman instilled in my father valuable lessons in Judaism, with an emphasis on how to be a good Jew. Early on, the Weissbergs recognized that Victor was a result-oriented, hard-working, straight-shooting dynamo with a great sense of humor, terrific people skills, and a strong drive to achieve. A definite overachiever with an unquestionable thirst for knowledge, my father, as a lifelong student, sought out many teachers other than those in his nuclear family. One of those teachers was Sidney Vincent. Sidney Vincent, a giant in the Cleveland Jewish community, partnered with Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver to educate young Jewish men and women through the rigors of pre- and post-World War II Cleveland. My father was a beneficiary of both of these great men. Sidney Vincent was a constant in my father's high school years. Mr. Vincent was my dad's high school teacher, scoutmaster, and Jewish youth group leader. He taught my father elocution, but equally important, Mr. Vincent taught my father what it meant to be a Jew in an ever-changing, often dangerous world. Growing up during the Depression with open and active anti-Semitism in America and the world was the crucible that formed and shaped Abba. The anti-Semitic radio tirades of Father Coughlin and the political aspirations of Lindbergh resonated with my father, as did the tragedy of the Holocaust. These led him in a lifelong fight against anti-Semitism. In fact, under Mr. Vincent's guidance, my father and his high school buddies went undercover, attending Nazi Bund meetings in Cleveland, and then reporting these nefarious activities to the Cleveland press. Mr. Vincent was my father's role model. He taught my father what it meant to be committed, to be a committed, effective teacher. He taught that you had to inspire your students. You had to be a big thinker, strive for the highest level of achievement, doggedly pursue your intellectual curiosities, be innovative, embrace change, but critically. Mr. Vincent taught my father the urgent need to support the establishment of a Jewish homeland, Zionism. Fast forwarding to November 1954. My father brought these valuable lessons imported on him by his immediate family and Mr. Vincent to his then burgeoning role as a teacher, pulpit rabbi, community leader, and father. Armed with multiple degrees in education, years of teaching, smicha from HUC, a stint as an assistant rabbi at Temple Isaiah, Israel, this dynamo, Victor Weissberg, was installed as the senior rabbi of Temple Bethel on November 5, 1954. I know this because I was born a week later. The secret sauce, however, was Tamar Weissberg, a beautiful Sabra introduced to my dad by Rabbi Freddie Schwartz. She was a policewoman in the Jerusalem headquarters of the Mishnah. My dad wanted to stay in Israel, but my mother selflessly recognized that my father would not achieve his full potential unless he returned, new wife in hand, to the United States. That was in 1952. Together, my father and mother built the vibrant community of Bethel. The congregants, parents and children alike, became our family because other than Grandma Ruth in Cleveland, we had no other family in America. The synagogue embraced us, taking us under their wings to achieve a beautiful, all-encompassing Jewish experience centered in our largely Jewish community of West Rogers Park, Lincolnwood, Muskogee. Hand in hand, often literally, my father and mother inspired their congregants, and especially their children, on being better Jews, the importance of Israel, Yiddishkeit, and observance. As master educators, my parents taught many of us the important lessons of achieving to the highest level possible. As students, we learn these lessons almost effortlessly in a fun atmosphere and the loving embrace. None of this happened without my parents' hard work as a super duo. Take, for example, the high holidays. Starting every July, my father would draft 4 major high holiday sermons. Then, beginning in August, after Ema processed the first drafts, they would meet for hours at the dining room table, debating, challenging, editing, and re-editing the drafts. Spoiler alert, my mother was no shrinking violet. And she had the Jewish bona fides to have her voice heard in this joint endeavor. We kids would make ourselves very scarce during this creative process. But even with the doors closed to our respective bedrooms, we could hear Ema exclaim from time to time in her beautifully accented voice, "Victor!" Tomorrow we find my father's thinking and writing a tall chore, considering my father's towering intellect and almost boundless knowledge. This collaborative effort did not end there. My father was the idea person, and my mother was the tireless engine bringing my father's visionary ideas into beautiful, scripted fruition. Their partnership was an art form of love, adoration, and cooperation. Through this tapestry, the extended Weissberg family benefited greatly. My father was always innovating, largely because he strongly adhered to the ideas that change was good, that you should never let things get stale, make it fun for all participants, young and old, all while remaining true to the Jewish traditions and observance, tikkun olam, and my parents' devotion to Israel. We all benefited greatly from my parents' joint efforts. Along this beautiful journey, my father skillfully demonstrated his chops as a visionary pulpit rabbi and his almost magical ability to build consensus among different constituencies. Just to name a few things. He built 2 synagogue buildings and was the driving force for fundraising for these monumental projects. One in Tui in Albany in 1956, where a street sign now stands to honor his work as a community leader. Another building was consecrated in the 1990s in Northbrook, the present home of Bethel. Always respectful of Jewish traditions and the importance of observance, my father bucked the pre-1954 Bethel system. He instituted the wearing of kippot and tallit, the observance of the second day of Rosh Hashanah, B'nai Mitzvot for all sexes, Shabbat services on Friday nights, Jewish education beyond confirmation, the Israeli flag on the bima, JUF fundraising, Israel bond drives. As a pulpit rabbi, he produced content like a whirling dervish. For example, each confirmation class performed a cantata, originally scripted by my father. Mine was, "And Frank lives." He instituted a children's choir, a participant myself, as was Amira and Gary Zola. I can still hear my father initiate a musical number with, "Hit it, Ellie!" He instituted adult education, teaching a broad scope of classes on Bible, Talmud, Kabbalah, and current events. But don't kid yourself. My father had really high standards for all of his students, and especially the Weissberg kids. Armed with the tenets of hard work and achievement, my father pushed us kids, to achieve yashar, straight line, no years abroad, no years off for us. We achieved undergrad degrees and immediately after achieved graduate degrees. In his words, he wanted us to be top-notchers in all aspects of our lives. He said to us, if you're successful, you'll be happy. These attitudes were not just reserved for his kids. All of his students had to memorize their bar mitzvah speeches. These speeches were rehearsed under my father's watchful direction to ensure the speech was delivered with impactful elocution. How many of us recall my father's admonition? Lower your voice here. Raise your voice here. Pause. Louder. Rehearsed until your delivery was impactful. Yet, he knew how to make his teaching points in a funny and interesting way. Here's a classic. In critiquing Alona's work, writing work one day, he said to her, "You write like Moliere." He couldn't write English either. They're bored, but we won't do it. And lo and behold, if you cross the line, beware of receiving the dreaded Abba letter. These multi-page letters were given to errant Weissberg children and Bethel students that somehow disappointed him. I got 5 or 6 until I told them I never read them. But as a family, we had lots of fun. We celebrated Shabbat together as kids and later adults with our extended families in attendance. We never missed Shabbat. Ima would prepare venerable feasts, Abba leading us in Kiddush, Abba blessing each attendee, Zmirot and benching. Shabbat was our oasis. My friends, a lot of whom were considered family, attended Shabbat, and many holiday celebrations with the Weissbergs. We were joined in celebration and insightful conversation with my dad's rabbinic buddies, nuns, diplomats, and future rabbis like our dearest. One year, we even had an Egyptian attend our Seder. I thought that would have gotten more laughs. My father masterfully got us kids involved in enriching Jewish activities and Jewish charities. Each of us loved going to Jewish camps, on trips to Israel, and during our high school years, being active in the Temple's High Club Youth Group, created by my father to keep Jewish high schoolers active in Judaism and synagogue. And it worked. High Club services and activities were often attended by more than 100 Skokie, Lincolnwood, and Rogers Park teenagers. Despite the long work hours, my father always adhered to my mother's firm rule that he'd be home for dinner. We had a lot of laughs. Each of us loved to make my father laugh, and he unconditionally loved each of us, embracing our antics and imperfections. Did we hero worship my father, like many of you? Sure, especially when he literally lit up the bima in his robes, doing his rabbinic thing. 4 times. We admired him greatly when he took on the Nazis who planned to march in Skokie, when he led food drives for Selma, when he was a chaplain in Cook County Jail, when he brought the Hebrew high school to our synagogue, when he founded with Jonah Cohen, whose daughter is here, to protect our heritage, the Israel-centric path, when he surreptitiously sent parachutes to Israel during the 6-Day War. Statute of limitations is passed. How could you not hero worship when during the 6-Day War we heard of in a heated telephone conversation with who we thought was Hashem? My father was on the phone exclaiming, "No, God, I can't do that. God, that won't work." Only later did we learn that he was actually talking to an Israeli called God. But we unconditionally loved him as our down-to-earth father during our multi-hour drives ending in Gliva, trips to Starved Rock where we collected leaves, driving trips to Colorado, train rides to Common Walk for our annual temple retreat, shopping as a family for Pesach, attending plays, museums, and symphonies. and he was always easy to be with. He was never depressed or sad, even when doing sad things like delivering challah to bereaved congregants who suffered a loss before each Rosh Hashanah. For him, these difficult times were a chance to uplift the infirm, the bereaved, and the weary. Each of us had the pleasure of working with my father as adults on major projects. Together as a family and with the larger community recruited through my father's ruach. We brought Mitzvah Day to Chicago. We successfully fought the construction of the crematorium at the Jewish cemetery in Pulaski. We hosted JO brunches, Israel bond drives, and planting trees in Israel. And we created and performed the Civil War Shabbat service. Interestingly, my father thought that he could find the answer to everything in the book, and he never stopped studying or reading in the quest to address his unquenchable thirst for knowledge. He loved studying Talmud on a very high level, and he devoted many hours every week preparing for his shiur at the Kollel with Rabbi Walsh. My dad never wanted to disappoint his teachers. Not surprisingly, he decided to end dialysis and go into hospice when he could no longer study Talmud effectively or attend services at his beloved spiritual home here at Ezra Habani, Niles Township Congregation. In closing, my family wants to thank a few special people and extended family members. First, the caregivers. Donna Williams. I could do a full speech on Donna. Thank you so much, Donna. And Grace Caron. Temple Bethel, of course. Dr. Manev and the nephrology team. Dr. Jerry Lewis. Yoni Nativ in helping to guide us in medical decisions. And Ezra Habani for your loving embrace of my father and mother. Victor Weissberg, this master pulpit rabbi, teacher, community leader, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and friend, left his indelible, loving mark on all of us and made all of us better people. His legacy is shared by many. May his memory be a blessing to all.
Too much Ariel, and Mary Alona. Really beautiful and powerful. Thank you. For a grandchild's perspective, please be called forward, Micah Sussman.
It's quite an act to follow. I'm Micah Sussman. I have the distinct honor of representing my cousins and our children as we celebrate the incredible life that Victor Weissberg left. I've written and rewritten and rewritten what I want to say at least 15 times. My wife contributed to that. But it never seems like an adequate way to discuss such a prolific human being. Because for us, he was simply Saba. Saba was connected to so many people and organizations that the song "Wherever You Go, There's Someone Jewish" should be his theme song. It wasn't only that someone knew him, but that they loved him. Growing up with a grandfather who was as well regarded and as well known as Saba puts a lot of things into perspective. But as an adult, it's easy to see just how he became so prominent in everyone's life. Before I talk about Saba, I want to talk about my cousins. There was one thing Saba never stopped saying, and that was how much he loved and was proud of his grandchildren. And how proud he was to have great-grandchildren. His pride was his family, and his grandchildren were the representation of that pride. No matter what else, Saba wants us to remember how important we all were to him. That said, there were many things that made Saba the man he was, not just to us, but to the people around him. He loved Judaism and Israel. He valued lifelong learning, and he wanted to find joy in every occasion. We never saw the serious rabbi with his nose in a book when we were kids. We saw a gregarious man of the people who found humor in every situation. He loved Purim, dressing up every year for the Purim carnival and fully basking in the festivities at Temple Bethel. He danced with the Torah on Simchas Torah and made sure everyone was having a good time. But most of all, he was able to find joy and bring humor even to sad situations. Saba had a unique ability to celebrate someone's life. When our Savta died, we spent more time laughing together than crying. Sure, we were all sad, but Saba taught us that the joyous memories are the ones to focus on. And as a man who performed more funerals than anyone I know, he was always quick to make a joke or tell a funny story because celebrating life was the most important thing. Saba's ability to find sources of joy was exemplified by the songs he sang. Saba was known for breaking out into "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" at the start of any journey. And ours must have been the only Reformed Seder pushing midnight because we were singing so many songs. As he got older and struggled to read the words on the page, he was still able to sing all the songs from the Passover song sheets that I am certain are older than my parents. Saba always encouraged us to have fun. We used to give him a hard time imitating our Savta, saying things like, "Vic, Vic, come quick." He would laugh, never took himself so seriously. And even when we made the best Passover song, "How You Make a Rabbi," sung to the tune of "How You Make a Matzah," about him, he would sing along. Joy and fun were Saba's lifestyle, but learning was his true passion. To say Saba was well-educated doesn't do him justice. It's like saying the Mona Lisa is a wonderful painting. His words just simply don't fit. Saba spent his entire life learning. As adults, we saw how his extensive education manifested. Saba was an amazing counselor. We would stop by his house to drop something off or say hi to him and our grandmother, and there was always someone in his basement sitting with him in those big brown chairs, many of you know, just talking. Sometimes that person was a stranger, and sometimes it was one of us. Saba always shared his insight in a lesson, usually accompanied by an obscure story from the Talmud. Perhaps more importantly, he valued the education and knowledge in others. As we grew up, our conversations with him matured. It was a give and a take. Even when he was listening to you talk about the work you were doing, Saba was learning. He would always have insights and ideas, challenging you in a way that was respectful and aware. Saba wanted to see his family strive for excellence and succeed in the best possible way. When someone dies, we spend a lot of time talking about their legacy. My grandparents' legacy, and I say it's a joint legacy because they were partners in every sense of the word, is one of education, love of family, and growth. For most people, legacy is an idea. For Saba and Savta, it's the work that shaped people's lives across Chicago, the country, and quite possibly the world. Both believed we should never stop being students. They gave scholarships to support Jewish education and continued learning. They pushed people to do more, to think bigger, and even to do good when it wasn't easy. Saba and Savta valued love of family, and as I said before, Saba's greatest love was his family, especially his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. The cousins have been Saba's sluggers for as long as I can remember. We even added our spouses a few years back and got t-shirts to prove it. More than anything, he was enamored with his great-grandchildren. To be honest, sometimes our great-grandmother, Grandma Ruth, was a little bit frightening. Saba was anything but. Our children knew him and loved him and were excited to sit with him and talk and involve him in their lives. My one regret is that Saba won't be here to see his great-grandchildren because become bar and bat mitzvah, nor will he give the priestly benediction for our family members, a tradition that has spanned multiple generations. There are a million other things we could talk about. The revolving door of people who came to our seders every year, how to avoid receiving a Saba letter. That's a college level course that the cousins teach on Wednesdays. Or how he continued to take a nap on the floor well into his 90s. At 37, I don't think that's something that I can do. He was a man who traveled the world, experienced all facets of life, and achieved excellence. Saba was a giant. But at least for me, Saba was not the giant who cast his shadow over others. Rather, he held a light up to shine the way for others to succeed. And if we forget everything else that Saba taught us, this is the lesson we should take into the future. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you so much, Micah.
Awesome.
Psalm 121. Pleased to have my colleague, Daniel Gale, chant the 121st Psalm. I lift my eyes unto the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the eternal God, who say, Shema Haaretz, maker of heaven and earth.
May I say, like Rabbi, I'm honored to be able to participate.
Very honored to have with us a native Evanstonian, a native of someone who grew up at Temple Beth El with the Weissberg family, Executive Director Emeritus of the American Jewish Archives, Dr. Rabbi Gary Zola. In from Cincinnati.
Friends, in a well-known and insightful teaching from the scriptures, the Ecclesiast wrote, Sof kol ha'adam ve'hachai yitain el libo. Remembering and reflecting on Yamim Rishonim, days that are past, is humankind's instinctive response to the loss of those we love. We are comforted, all of us, by heartwarming treasures of reminiscences that have accumulated over our journey here in the land of the living. And this is certainly the case this afternoon. Ki sar v'gadol nafal hayom hazeh b'Yisrael, because on this day, a great prince in Israel has fallen. Friends and family, it would take many hours of eulogy to adequately capture the influence that Rabbi Weissberg had on my life and on the lives of nearly 24 men and women whom he launched into the American rapids, and of whom he was so proud. He took tremendous pride in the number of disciples that he raised up over the course of a remarkable rabbinic career. And if the facts are scrubbed clean, it must be truthfully said that the entire trajectory of my life would have been completely different had my parents decided to join a synagogue other than Temple Bethel, then of Chicago. My education, my Jewish education, began when I was 11, many years after so many of those in my first religious school class. Walking into the temple's doors that first day, it is true, I was a kli rik. I was an empty vessel, Jewishly speaking. What's your Hebrew name? Rabbi Weissberg asked. I don't have one, I replied so awkwardly. Okay, the rabbi said cheerily. Now you have one. Your Hebrew name will be Gershom. And from Gershom, the rabbi invented a special diminutive that he used every single time we met face to face. Gersh. How are you, Gersh? In my personal library in Cincinnati, I cherish 3 volumes of Sansino books of the Bible. These 3 volumes were inscribed by Rabbi Weissberg on important childhood occasions. On January the 30th, 1965, the day I became a bar mitzvah, the rabbi wrote these words on the inside cover of the book of Jeremiah. Dear Gersh, red hair was David's special mark. Tradition states that all royalty had red hair. Perhaps you are royally born. But the proof of royalty for the Jewish people is our conduct. We are a kingdom of priests. We must speak the truth. We must be just and honorable and above all, help people to feel God's presence by our friendship. Join us. What I could not discern at that peculiar age of 13 seems so obvious to me now 60 years later. The rabbi was intentionally implanting the seedling of a vision that would blossom over the years and lead me to follow him in service to the Jewish people. Rabbi Weissberg loved the rabbinate, and as we have heard, his extraordinary human abilities to intentionally raise up rabbinical disciples was a natural extension of who he was. Those of us who were his students then could not help but take notice of this remarkable teacher's extraordinary personal traits. First, as we've heard, Rabbi Weissberg was learned. He loved the life of the mind, and he never tired of stoking this passion. Nothing related to Jewish life disinterested him. Nothing related to learning disinterested him. And although Talmud and rabbinic literature became much of a central focus for the rabbi these last several decades, in truth, he simply loved to learn about the Jewish experience. In an interview that he gave to the Jerusalem Post 4 years ago, he expatiated on this very topic. Quote, "I am sometimes asked if I will ever learn enough. I cannot imagine. I cannot envision any point in my life where I am not continuing to learn Torah. This is an obligation of every Jew," he said. And if an academic subject matter could be linked somehow, in some way, to the Jewish enterprise, then, as far as Rabbi Weissberg was concerned, it was Torah. Hebrew, philology, philosophy, history, liturgy, psychology, and of course classical texts. It was all Torah. And he was a living exemplar of the bold assertion that our ancient sages famously asserted. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The study of Torah is the most important pursuit because it leads to a greater, more noble human being. Second, it was so obvious that the rabbi was the paradigm of a human being who loved people. He could converse with anybody and everybody, from scholars to the unschooled. He would inquire always about your family. He was the great interrogator. How is your work? How are your studies? What are you interested in? And most remarkably, he possessed an astonishing ability to recall that which he was told years later, testifying to the fact that he was not merely feigning interest, but actually listening and remembering. During my childhood days at Temple Bethel, this is a fact, the rabbi knew the name of every child in our religious school, a feat that all of us took for granted. Until, of course, we met high school teachers who would see us every single day in class, but had no idea who we were in the hall. Through his humor, with that pixie-like twinkle in his eyes that he was ready to display, his vivaciousness, his dexterous ability to interact always with young and old. All these qualities combined and convinced us that this man personified the words of the great Rabbi Hillel, Ohev et habriut umikarvan laTorah. If you love your fellow human beings, you will be able to draw them close to Torah. And his zest for people, of course, coincided with such a deep, pervasive love for the Jewish people, and particularly the modern Jewish state. Others have already spoken and taken note of this aspect of his career, which grew even larger and more passionate over the decades. But as a member of Temple Bethel back in the year 1967, during those vaunted days of the Six-Day War, the memories of how our rabbi enthused and preached and motivated our congregation, it permanently shaped our youthful understanding of Jewish peoplehood. With Rabbi Weissberg's encouragement, our boomer generation spent summers in Israel, volunteered on kibbutzim, enrolled in third-year abroad programs, and populated modern Hebrew classes at the universities. And in contrast to other Reformed synagogues in Chicagoland, there was never any ambivalence about Zionism or the towering importance of the Jewish state. Our rabbi taught us that God, as it were, possessed a transcendent love for the land of Israel. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chaviva Alai Eretz Yisrael Yoter Min Hakol. And we, his students, have carried that passion with us to this day. Rabbi Weissberg was also a remarkable, truly remarkable spiritual leader. He exhorted us to love the faith of our forebears. And he not only led worship, he concomitantly participated in the prayer service. We can see him if we close our eyes, putting his hands over his eyes and meditating himself privately when he called upon the congregation to silently pray. The prayerful thoughts that he could offer spontaneously when he was blessing a child or a young couple or those who were celebrating a golden anniversary. They were filled with earnest spirituality. There was no sanctimoniousness, there was no pretense about this piety. He displayed his belief that life possessed transcendent meaning and that faithfulness and worship offered the human being a safe harbor from life's troubled waters. And Acharon Chaviv, we point again to what has already been said by his family. He loved his family. That was the capstone of meaning for the rabbi. Tamar, a blessed memory. The woman he adored and revered. She was an equal partner in every aspect of life. And please know Amira, Ariel, and Alona, your partners in life, your children, your grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. They were the apple of his eye every single time he and I spoke. And I would say, Rabbi, how are you? He would immediately provide me with a full and unmistakably prideful report, not on him, but on each and every one of you. And of all his blessings, Tamar and his children, and this massive extended family brought him unhemmed joy and fulfillment. Friends, one of the most moving legends in Talmudic literature speaks about a man who was hungry and thirsty and tired and roaming through the desert. This man came upon a beautiful tree that was standing next to a clear brook. And on that tree he found ripe fruit, and under the tree's branches he was able to take shade. And from that flowing rivulet next to the tree he could quench his thirst. And so as he was about to leave this bucolic scene, the man turns to the tree and says, Ilan, Ilan, b'me avarechecha. O tree, how can I bless you? Should I offer a blessing that your fruit be sweet? Your fruit is already sweet. Should I offer a blessing that your shade be plentiful? Your shade is already plentiful. Should I pray that the beautiful spring of water that runs adjacent to your roots grows? It's already flowing. What blessings, O tree, are there left for me to offer you? And then the ancient sages say it finally dawned on the man that there was indeed one indispensable blessing, one towering prayer through which he could truly express his thankfulness. Yehi Ratzon. All the trees that are planted from your seeds become like you. So friend, family, if we strive to preserve the finest aspects of Rabbi Weissberg's life, and we truly permit them to live and endure within us, then his life becomes a striking similitude to the tree in this famous Jewish fable. For the most beautiful seeds that he sowed during the many years that he dwelt with us, these seeds will bloom, and they will bloom again and again if we, all of us, endeavor to preserve the blessings that he wrought when he was here among us. And this teaching is the same insight that the brilliant Scottish poet Thomas Campbell captured in a sentence in his famous poem, Hallowed Ground. To live in the hearts of those we leave behind is never to die. One last teaching in honor of the Rabbi. According to our ancient sages, the Eternal One's ministering angels would cry human tears of sorrow when one of the patriarchs or the matriarchs left this world. Yet these heavenly tears, the sages say, somehow, miraculously, would transform themselves into real, beautiful pearls just as soon as they fell from the angel's eyes. Rabbi, Hinecha shochev im avotecha. You now have laid down with your forebears. V'kam ha'am hazeh. You can rest in peace, fully assured, knowing that that this people, your family, your congregation, your rabbinical disciples, your beloved people, the state of Israel, will all abide and endure. And you, Rabbi, you too will live on in the hearts of a loving family and in all the seeds you have sown so diligently in the soil of this a grateful community. So may the Eternal One turn our tears of sorrow, into pearls of a brighter crown, sending peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And on that prayer, I know we can all say together. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Zola. A great honor to have you with us and sharing this afternoon. Also an honor to share the bima with Rabbi Weissberg's successor, my friend and former senior rabbi at Temple Bethel, current senior rabbi at Temple Bethel, Rabbi Sidney Hellbrown.
I hate to correct Rabbi Weil, but I would say there could be no successor to Rabbi Weissberg. He was a force, and a force that I never sought, tried to follow. I didn't succeed him, but I myself, and he was somebody, right, who I could never, that would never have been me. I'll give you one quick example. A lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you're so nice, you're such a nice rabbi." And people would come to talk to me about Rabbi Weissberg, and they would say one of two things, more the second than the first. They would say, "I don't like him." They might not even say it that way. Or they would say, "I love him." And that's really what it is when you are a force. When you are out to create something big and bold and important and beautiful. Sometimes everybody doesn't agree with your vision. But if you're going to build and create it, then you're going to make it happen, and you're going to push through. And there's a picture that I saw in Rabbi Weissberg's office that was there. Well, it's probably still sitting in his office. That I hazard to suggest that there are no other Reform rabbis. I'll bet not many conservative rabbis either have this picture. It's a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I used to wonder, why does he have that picture in his office? And I think the answer is fairly obvious. The Lubavitcher Rebbe built a movement. He built an institution. It was far, far, far greater than any other rabbi could have created, could have built. He took something that was small and built it into a force. And that was your Abba. He had visions, he saw the visions. Other people would say, "I don't have the time." Other people would say, "Somebody else will do it." Other people would say, "There are other important things going on." And he took that vision, whether it was a pack, whether it was a camp to teach Hebrew, a summer camp to teach Hebrew, he he would build what he saw. He would create what he saw. And he did that for Temple Bethel over the course of, can you believe, 70 years in a community? Amazing. And just, I don't want to speak too long, although Rabbi Weissberg, I sat with him at many a funeral, you have too. He wasn't shy about how long the funeral was. He would say what he needed to say, and then, other people would come. And so I know you were expecting that this would be what it is. So no apologies for that, but and I forgot where I was going. He, as Rabbi Zola had shared, one of the most incredible gifts that he had was he knew you. He knew your story, but he didn't just know your story, he knew your parents' story. And then he could tell you things about your parents that you didn't know. He knew them. There was nobody who he met who he could not see on the street and remember who they were and where they came from, and his love of study, just the mind that this man had, his strength, his ability was beyond. It was beyond compare. I just want to say one word about the ceremony that we opened with, the Navy flag presentation. I think it was one of the most moving ceremonies I've witnessed. And it was beautifully done by the Navy ensign. I don't know the right term. They did a beautiful job, but that's not what made it beautiful. What made it beautiful was patriotism and the flag. We're part of Rabbi Weissberg's soul as well. He sacrificed for this country, he stood for this country, he spoke of his love for this country, as well as the Israeli flag on the Bima, there was an American flag. He was a patriot for the Jewish people, and a patriot for the country, for America. I could go on and on. I shared this with a few family members. I remember the first time I did a funeral for somebody who was in their hundreds. And I showed up at their house, and their house would have looked just like yours did, with grown grandchildren. And I came to the house and I thought, wow, this is going to be a beautiful sharing event. And it was one of the most tragic homes I ever sat in. And I was sort of blown away by it, because I thought to myself, here is a life that was as good a life as you could have. She lived a good full life. Her grandchildren were there. She had great-grandchildren who she knew. We don't live forever, and their grief was so deep, and it took me a long time. And what I realized was that when somebody is present and lives a life like Rabbi Weissberg lived, they become like Mount Rushmore. They're part of the fabric of the world. You look at the world and there are certain things that are present. He was one of those things. Until the very end, his presence was with you, was with all of us. He never stopped being present. And then that presence is gone. And you say, how can I live in this world? How the world can't exist with that presence. It's been here forever. It's been here not only my children's life, but my grandchildren's life, how can the world exist? And that was also Rabbi Weissberg. His presence will still be with all of those lives he touched. But his presence was ever present and a part of the world as we knew it. And that's something, as much as we have memories, that's something that we can't replace. But we do have our love, and that gift of family which he cherished, which he built, which he created. He was an incredible blessing to his family. He was an incredible builder of a community, and builder of Judaism and the Jewish people. And we are ever grateful for his presence in our lives. I'd like to invite you to join with me in the inside of the cafe. He could talk for hours about the 23rd Psalm. I will read it, and you can join with me in the hymn instead. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, linodesha yarbitzeni, almeinu chotina halim, nafshi yeshoveh, yanacheni v'ma'adolei tzedek l'ma'am shema. Gam ki elef begates al mavet lo ra ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged surai. Yishanta b'shem en roshi. Kosi l'vayit. Ach tov b'chesed yirefuni kol yemei chayim. Yishavti b'beit Adonai la'orach yami. Together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may his memory ever be a blessing to all who knew and loved him.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Elron, Rabbi Zola, all of you. Many words have been spoken, and I will do my very best not to repeat anything, but I know that this has not been mentioned. You all knew Rabbi Weissberg. You feel like you knew Rabbi Weissberg fairly well. Should we do one little bit of Rabbi Victor Weissberg trivia? What were the first 3 letters of his license plates? Very good. HBX. That is correct. That's really all I wanted to say. HBX, like how would you pronounce that? A pass. There's something in called a pax legomenon, a pax legomenon, which is hapax means once, and hapax legomenon is something that appears once, a phrase or a word that appears once in a text, like the word that appears once in the Bible is hapax legomenon. Victor Weissberg was that. He was a hapax legomenon kind of human being. He was a once in a generation man. It was not a vanity plate, it was just whatever they gave him. The stars must have aligned at the DMV. Unique he was. His brilliance, confidence, warmth, humor, and that charisma all kind of like splashed together and came into this world as a walking and talking hapax. He was also a sense of hapax of a child. He was an only child, as we heard. We know him as the adult with a physical bearing, that impressive physical bearing. He always had that. Tall, athletic. You might not have known that as well. He played football at Glenville High School. He was always industrious. He worked as a teenager. He was a soda jerk at a drugstore. Fired. He sold shoes. Fired. He and his friends clocked in but never clocked out. He tarred streets. Fired. Okay, so his destiny was not to be a tar of streets, but he still forged a good path for himself, even at that time, teaching Hebrew school, working as a youth group advisor, a scout leader for Jewish kids. That was more like it. We heard about him, his relationships, his mentors during high school, Rabbi Silver, and so forth. He went to the Navy. He was stationed at the New York Harbor. It was the first time, it was somewhat of a wake-up call, the first time that he was amid sort of the broad, diverse folk of America. And he can handle that. We know that he can handle being with all sorts of people. But there was one issue. When this cerebral sailor, Victor Weissberg, asked for a schedule change from his commanding officer to accommodate the needs of a correspondence course that he decided to take while he was in the Navy, the MIFT CO, commanding officer, said to him, responded by saying, "You'll be the first one shipped out." Victor wrote home that he might not return. But thank God it was towards the end of the war. Return he did, matriculated at the University of Chicago, studied hard, ever industrious. He was leading a youth group as well, but he started to fall asleep during class because he was working so hard and studying so studiously. So he stopped that work, but he did not stop that trajectory of teaching, serving the Jewish community, leading. Went to Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, spent that year in Jerusalem where he met Tamar, and they married in Israel, and then they returned to Cincinnati to finish up rabbinical school, and then to Hyde Park to serve as an assistant rabbi at Isaiah Israel. While he was there, some at Isaiah Israel were suspicious. Why was he helping to set up a school, religious school elsewhere? But Rabbi Weissberg had no desire then or throughout his life other than to build, strengthen, and serve the Jewish world. Jewish learning, Jewish communities, the Jewish states. That is what this man was about. Of course, he was also a man of the family, of his family. The Weissberg family, this robust, beautiful family. They grew at that time with each succeeding A. Amira, Ariel, Alona, triple A, demonstrating confidence in the future. And that future came a-knocking when Temple Bethel hired Rabbi Weissberg, as we have heard. He and Tamar were a power couple, a Jewish power couple. She was the boss at home. She was also the keeper of the checkbook. When she discovered her husband rounding up and rounding down, she said, "Give me that." Rabbi Weissberg was boss at Temple Bethel. When Amira pointed out that her father had given her a pointless task in his office, she challenged her dad a little bit. He said, "I'm the boss here." True. But he was really Abba, as we've heard so beautifully, to Amira, Ariel, and Alona, and no less so to Ken and Chava. Saba to the grandchildren, as we've heard, Super Saba to the great-grandchildren, and to us, Rabbi. I have never called him Victor. He was Rabbi. And I understood this even before I met him. Before I began as Bethel's assistant rabbi, this was 2007, assistant to Rabbi Hellbrown, I received a letter from Rabbi Weissberg, classic Weissberg, full of capitalizations, underlined words, some history of Bethel, brimming with Weissberg personality. And I thought to myself as I read that letter, this is one serious, significant man. And I was right. It was not merely his enormous creative output, which is prodigious, learning, writing, community building, organizing, organization, developing, advocacy, preaching and teaching. There was also that presence which we all know about. Here's an example. He and Tamar once joined us Wiles and some other Bethel families at Asrui for a retreat, Shabbaton. And on that Shabbat morning, Rabbi Weissberg offered a teaching, some Devar Torah. And there was, for some reason, who knows, a ladder in the middle of the lodge. Rabbi Weissberg, how old at that point? 84? While he's talking, while he's teaching, we're all watching, climbed the ladder, not missing a single word. He climbed it, still talking to us, and we're like looking at him like this, and then we're looking at him like this. And as he's talking and teaching on that perch, he's spinning the fringes of his house. And I thought to myself, man, why didn't I think of that? That is some serious moxie and charisma. Whatever he was teaching, whatever he was preaching at that time, he meant it. He always meant what he preached. He was authentically spiritual. And he believed, as Rabbi Zola mentioned, he believed in God's presence and action and dominion over this earth, in our affairs. Someone who grew up with him at Temple Bethel said that he believed his rabbi, Rabbi Weissberg, could pick up the phone and call God. And going. Well, he certainly did call God in prayer. Not long ago, just the morning of this Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh, I was visiting Rabbi Weissberg in the home on Sherwin, and he was laying in his bed, and I suggested that we recite the Shema together. And he said, you gotta say the Shema like we talk a minutes. And we did. And then he just started talking to me for a long time, referencing Torah, Talmud, Israel, holidays, customs, tradition, history. It was like a torrent of teaching, a torrent of Torah just coming out of him. He was just delivering the galaxies, the universes of knowledge that he had absorbed through pretty much a century of learning. He had earned his degrees, as we heard, in education, of course as a rabbi, Hebrew letters, psychology, and he was maximally dedicated to his study of Gemara every week with Rabbi Warch. I would call him at times, and he would say, he couldn't talk at times, not merely because he was going to be with Rabbi Warch to learn, but he was just preparing for that study session. And we are all benefited from his erudition and his warmth, learned, never aloof. He was beloved here at Ezra Habanim and Al Section Jewish Congregation. For years, he would stand right here and deliver the introduction to the Unitad Tokef, or as you'd like to say, the Unitad Tokef. We will miss that. We will miss him being in the crowd back there as we would toast to L'chaim after services on Shabbat morning. We'll miss schmoozing during Kiddush. We'll miss his goody-goody that he would say, which he loved. We'll miss how we would watch him caring for Tamar for those years, which was so moving to all of us. We'll miss him. We are honored, Alona, by your presence. Victor Weissberg, Rabbi Weissberg, Abba, Saba, Super Saba. Rabbi Weissberg, leader, teacher, friend to generations of admirers. This summer, during one of his dialysis sessions, he and I talked about the end of his life. I asked him if he was scared. He said, others have gone before me, and I've had a good life. Amen to that. And our lives were better for that life, for his life, his presence among us, his memory always for blessing. Amen. Please rise for the El Malay Rachamim Memorial Prayer.
את נשמת הרב מורנו אביגדור חיים בן יצחק שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהיה מנוחה ותצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא וינוח ושלום על משכבו ונאמה
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest to the holy and pure who glow like the light of the heavens in your sheltering presence to Rabbi Victor Weissberg, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and within the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, we say. Amen. You may be seated.
Thanks for Weissberg from Shalom Memorial car from Ever Temple Bethel texted me when Rabbi Halperin was up and said, "What time do you think you'll be here?" And I texted back with a question mark. Certainly a fitting tribute. So at this time, we're going to have the pallbearers, who are the grandchildren, take Rabbi Weissberg out to the car, out to the hearse. Anybody that is going to go to Shalom, we're going to ask you to go on your own. And it's 2:40, so I think it would be safe to say that we will reconvene there at 3:30. Please enter the Wilkie Road entrance, not the Rand Road entrance. There will be signs at the Wilkie Road entrance directing you to the gravesite. And we do have directions available on the back table where the register book still remains. In the pamphlets that you have here, there's the information that the family will be coming back here to Ezra Habanim, Niles Township, after the service today until 8:30, and then tomorrow at Ariel Weissberg's residence and all that. At this time, if everybody would please rise, and if the pallbearers would please come up.
Kol Omer Kra, V'Mar Ma Kra, Kol HaBasar Chatzir, V'Kol Chatzo, Chatzitz Hasadeh. Yavesh Chatzir, Navel Tzitz, Kiruach Ananai Nushbabo. Achein Chatzir Ha'am, Yavesh Chatzir, Navel Tzitz, Bar Elokeinu, Yakum Ve'olam. Voices cry out, I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass.